Fraser Downs. It's a time-honored tradition that happens to also be at a specific time each and every week. Thursdays and Fridays, you can expect some of the best harness racing British Columbia has to offer, and it's not just because it's the only track British Columbia has to offer. They also have Hastings. Of course, we all remember Hastings, and we remember two of our contributors for this week's show to talk about Fraser Downs harness racing after the successful opening weekend of the 2025 meet last week. Mike Pribozzi back with me. He joined me to talk with Don Lupel through last week's sequence. And then we have someone just a hop, skip, and a throw, maybe not in that order, away from Fraser Downs, Century Downs announcer, Murray Slough, also joined. Prominent gambler, too.
Yes, well, we one province over from BC, but closer than you guys are, that's for sure.
Certainly. And of course, you've been on many Harness Players podcasts, not just talking about Fraser Downs, but Woodbine Mohawk Park and a multitude of other things inside of this wonderful, wonderful world of harness racing. But yes, before we get to that, Mike, last week, we were talking with Don about how the pick four sequence was interesting for the most part because not a lot of horses had qualifiers. A lot of them we were seeing fresh off of a month, 2 months from the bench, and all said and done, paid about 61-1 with about $8,000 in the pool. So, for the most part, it was a pretty obvious sequence.
Yeah, I thought it was a good sequence. Paid decently. You know, that late pick four pool was the highest pool of any that was Thursday or Friday night there at Fraser. I thought handle, especially Friday, was solid with the amount of short fields that they had. Now we have a few more horses this week, and I just think they're steadily going to pick up. We got 9 races on Friday, so that's another positive. It's going to take a little bit for the horses to kind of, get themselves back into shape here because they've been off for a couple months. But, this Fraser product is something that I know we all believe in. So I do think that we're here to promote it. We're going to give you some ideas, and hopefully you can make some money.
And this isn't the only place we can get ideas too. Of course, with Fraser Downs opening, of course, harness racing starting to pick up steam as the temps start to rise in the outside. Spring around the corner, Mike. We got the harness newsletter coming at people too, and it's going to have focus of pretty much every sector of harness racing for this upcoming season.
Absolutely. And of course, we do on the Harness Players podcast cover plenty of tracks. Right now we got Fraser going, but as the year goes on, we'll have international coverage from Sweden. We'll have plenty of coverage from Mohawk and Hoosier, all the big races in the summertime. We're going to be all over that. So, keep an eye on that. And we do a lot of spot plays, things like that in the newsletter. So guys from horse racing Twitter, people we trust, people like Murray, Garnett Barnsdale, Brad A from Twitter. He's a Chicago guy. Regular horse players, Kevin Plaucha, Rod Adams Jr. Sometimes you'll throw a pick at us. Edison, he tends to throw some picks. So lots of good information out there, and we'll have plenty of guests as the year rolls on. So just stay tuned.
And then Murray, if I'm not mistaken, we're also with spring around the corner too. We're getting closer to Century time, huh?
We are. Yeah. March 29th is our opening day, Ray and Mike. So it's coming up pretty quick. I guess I should give a caveat that I haven't actually signed my contract yet for this year. So I'm not officially the Century Downs race announcer. We go year by year. They fire me at the end of every year and then rehire me for reasons that are yet to be determined. But usually I sign it within like a week before we start. So this is not unusual, but March 29th is the big day. That is a Saturday. We're going to be racing Saturday afternoons, which is not new, 12:45. But what is new is Wednesdays and Wednesday evening under the brand new lights that we have installed at Century Downs. That is the new thing. 6:15 Mountain Time Wednesdays is our other day besides Saturday. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited about the whole thing. But keep that in mind. Wednesday night, not a lot of harness tracks going. We're hoping to get a little more exposure at that time, and should be fun.
We're in talks too with Kelly to see about maybe getting Century for the podcast this year. So we'll see. And I would imagine that Murray, you'll be a big part of that. Yeah.
That would be great. Love it if we could do some podcasts. We've done just intermittently Alberta racing, as you guys know, a couple Century Mile ones when there was, the National Driving Championship and that kind of stuff. And I think it went pretty well. I think there was a lot of interest. And so, yeah, whatever we can do to promote it. It starts later this month, March 29th. And hopefully I'll be there calling the action.
Wednesdays will be great for Century visibility, mainly because you will be outside of the lucrative Oak Grove time zone, which is Mondays and Tuesdays. And
I think the main thing is they wanted to avoid Oak Grove, so mission accomplished.
And Mohawk too. I mean, no Mohawk Wednesdays.
Yeah. We were racing Friday evenings last year, and we were really getting sucked into obviously a Mohawk Meadowlands vortex, and you could try to jump around and avoid them post time wise. That's very hard to do. There's drag involved. There's a lot. It's just very difficult. Going to a completely different night is much better. So that's what we've done, and I think it should definitely be better for our Century Downs action.
Wednesday nights, at least for me, a soft spot in my heart on the racing calendar, because usually that's when my dad and I would go to the track. Middle of the week, just get out of the house.
Penn
No
National.
one wants us in the house, so we go to Penn National to be around people who equally do not want us around. Just a wonderful experience.
I have a soft spot for it myself, because when I started at the so-called big tracks, obviously Stampede Park, we raced a Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday schedule. So completely used to racing Wednesday nights. Same kind of thing I think happened for Stampede Park. Wednesdays weren't that bad because we didn't have that much competition, and I love it. So back to those glory days for me in a way here this year with the Wednesday night 6:15 at Stampede Park. We used to start at 6, so pretty much the same thing.
And that's mountain time. So you're
time. We're talking 8:15 Eastern. So some into the later hours for you guys. Not much going on. Hopefully, we get lots of Eastern play. That would be great.
You won't be conflicting then with the Fraser sweet spot either, because as many know if they follow Fraser, or if you're just tuning in, 7 p.m. Pacific time, the start for Fraser Downs, Thursdays and Fridays. That means 10 p.m. Eastern. If you're one of the Newfoundlanders or the Labradors, I don't mean the dogs. You can be any breed in my heart. That's 11 p.m. start time at Fraser. Late night action for Thursday and Friday. We're going to talk about Friday, real late night action. We're going to focus on the late pick four for Friday, March 7th. God, it was just February, and now it's March, in the same way that I was just 19 and I'm going to be 26 this year. So much like you guys, my life is, I'm in the middle of it. I'm on the late side of this wonderful ride of life. It's pretty much over at 26 from what people tell me. But
wow, I hope not.
Well, I turned 55 this year, double nickels. So
yeah,
don't tell me life's over at 25.
Hey, I'd go for a dime any day of the week. Late pick four. Late pick four. Starts in race 6 at Fraser Downs this Friday night. Estimated post time 8:40 p.m. Pacific, so that means 11:40 p.m. Eastern. If you're like Murray, that's just 9:40. You're maybe on like the second beer at that point in the night. There's still so much night to be had.
I'm mostly trying to stay awake, but okay. Yeah.
I imagine with Seinfeld on in the background too for your little entertainment.
Sure.
Okay. $12,000 claiming event. Short field, admittedly, but through this whole sequence, we see more horses in competition this time around. We're going to start it, though, a little slim with just 6. And Murray, right off the bat as well, we have a strong morning line favorite by the looks of it on the far outside with Brandon Campbell and Rebecca Cannock, 8-5. Do we take the 6?
How I said this one was Zilla Katzen. I have had to call this horse several times. It did actually win a stake for Chris Brown at Century Downs last year, and then since then moved to Travis Ellis, and now has been undefeated for Rebecca Cannock. As you mentioned, she is the trainer here, and she won just about everything opening weekend, right? 4 wins in her 6 starters last week. I bet the only horse I think she lost with, or one of them, Loaded Dragon. But this horse was very impressive. Hasn't lost for the Cannock barn. Did have the rail last time, got a sweet 2-hole, but you can count on Brandon to work out a trip. Looks the best to me. I figured singling here is the way to go. The only other ones I considered for a possible win threat were 1, 4, and 5, but I did single the 6 Zillicats in here for the powerful Canak Campbell combination.
Who is named, of course, as we all know, after the famous Mexican warrior from the he was a member of the Atomi, according to Wikipedia.
Well, I'm glad you looked that up. I did at one point look that up a long time ago. But yeah, Zillikatsin, right? That's how we say it?
It does not have a pronunciation alongside, so I think anything is fair game. I thought it was Greek, so this was actually kind of interesting.
Right. Well, Jennifer Clark bred and owned this horse. She named it. I should ask her if I could track her down the story behind it. But she's got a pretty nice horse on her hands here. Did you single this one, Mike?
No, I'll try Buddy Knox also. I do think that he has plenty of talent, and you know, this horse likes to win. He was a really nice 2-year-old here at this racetrack, and you know, had a couple starts last year. You know, mostly stakes heavy for him. I like the prep. I like the Rod Terry's barn. I do think that he could get a little bit of a setup here. This horse has a pretty big kick, and so with the 5 and the 6 outside, I think that they will go again. The inside 3 just don't really seem fast enough to me to beat these horses. So I would use the 6, but I do think the 4 Buddy Knox has a puncher's chance with a setup.
The way it might set up is if one does like to leave. Sorry, the Solar Solution, his only chance is to go to the front. Malloy likes to leave. He might ensure a hot pace, and then yeah, the 4 is probably the best closer here. Sorry, Ray.
Oh, I was going to say, because you bring up an interesting point with Malloy to the inside. I was thinking at the quarter it's going to line up 6-5. Well, I like maybe soon after the quarter. There's a part of me that doesn't think Malloy is really going to press out of there, because you look at his charge. This is a horse that's usually going 55, 54 nowadays. Does he really want to park out horses that are a second or two faster and maybe hurt his chance at a better check by just sucking along versus being that aggressive? Like, I think that's the trickiest part of the race. On top of, if the 6 gets strung to the quarter, which most likely would happen with Mock Steady because he's the most prominent speed in the race, does that matter?
But you know what Brandon might do? He might take back it's at 6th. He's done that before with this kind of a scenario. And then he makes the giant blast down the backside at whoever's leading. And I think either way he wins. I think he could survive getting parked, go to the front and win, or maybe take back and do the patented Brandon, you know, giant third quarter move and also win. He's going to probably check it behind the gate who all is leaving. And if 1 and 5 are both leaving hard, he may take back. But I see what you're saying.
Yeah, well,
he's going to leave for sure. There's no doubt about that. Mock Steady has to leave.
And especially with how I was constructing the ticket, because I think there are some kind of chalkier opportunities later. I wanted to take a stand, but I don't think I can, because the 6 has as equal a chance to get strung and win as he does to get strung just enough that the 5 might be in the most opportune spot to slip by and win. But this means that I'm going too deep with the 2 favorites inside the first leg, which I don't think is ideal, but just the way the race shapes up, I don't think the 4 is going to be in a good spot unless the pace totally collapses. I don't know how aggressive the 1's going to be. And like Mike said, the other horses that are to the inside don't seem fast enough to really get into good positions. So I'm 5-6 in the opening leg, almost begrudgingly, but I think that's an interesting point you make with that Brandon potentially trying to take back with Zillicats. And
he also might leave and think the 2 is going to gap, which he might, and get in front of the 2.
Okay. Or do you mean? Oh, I see what you mean. Because
it won't necessarily be able to keep up with a hot early pace, right? This horse doesn't really. To me, he's the horse that does gap when they go fast early, and that could also be a bit of an escape route for Brandon. Get in there, and then when he does his move later, he's a lot closer. I think Brandon will work it out that he's going to be able to win this race. It is relatively competitive, but for me, I just think the money here is singling and try to find a price later.
This is also a reminder, because most horse players, when they open up a program, they go, 6 horses? This blows! I don't want to look at it, but here we talked like 5-7
it's
minutes.
It's an race.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of strategy involved. And on top of that, with a colony of horses like this, as the season goes on, we get more familiar with their tendencies, the driver's tendencies. This is where you make the money of trying to figure out where some of these guys' abilities or inclinations might be exploited by the other guys, because you're just following what they're doing every single week. And even in short fields like this, it's a lot harder with, bigger fields. You can kind of hinge on the chaos causing certain outcomes to occur, but in shorter fields, there's a lot more thinking that has to go into it. I think that people say the same thing about thoroughbreds in a lot of cases too, where like the 4 or 5 horse fields sometimes are, they're as tough as like a 9-10 horse field in terms of just the break, the pace, how you handle the horse. There's a lot more going on, even though there's only 6 betting interests. So an interesting kickoff that I'm going to take the 2 most obvious horses in as we move into the second leg. The feature on the night, $10,000 preferred pace. 6 horses going postward in this one. And Mike, you and I were talking about this race with Dawn last week. I was of the thought that, it'll be fine from the post 6 first out. I don't think this is his week, but he had a really good race. He moves inside this time around. Is he kind of a no-brainer at this point, second off the bench?
I think he's a use for sure. I mean, last week we talked how West Coast Beach was the key to that race, and he was. He got inside position early for the hot barn, was able to capitalize on the pocket trip and beat those horses. Now he has to move outside, but I do think he's speedy enough and sharp enough right now to beat these horses again, and his price should be a little better than last week, I think. He's probably going to get an earlier spot. The 4 and the 5 are sitting again in the race. Now, Rum and Raisins went last time. I'm curious to see what he does again because he doesn't always leave. We'll see what happens with that one. I think West Coast Beach could end up with a similar trip. I do like him right back. I think you have to use him, and then it'll be fine. It's obvious, right? He had a really nice race last time. He kicked 28-1 in there. Perfect off the bench. You get, I think, a spot where now he could be more forward, and he's tough to leave off tickets. So I would probably live with those 2, but I don't know. I mean, they're pretty obvious in here. It's still another, I think, nice enough race, depending on how the pace sets up, that you could get an upset.
I like how I took a sip. Murray immediately was like, "Oh, I don't mind if I do too." But it's also interesting because last season, Fraser, Mike, you might remember, I was on West Coast Beach almost every single week, and now it's starting to build the trend. I'm never using this horse ever, and I think you were the only one of all of us last week that used him in the preferred and cashed. But Murray, with West Coast Beach to the outside, of course he has the speed and such. Does this race really get more competitive with, it'll be fine being sandwiched between what seems like a bunch of horses that want to go forward? Does that either play into his favor, or what do you think?
I think Dave leaves and looks for a pocket, which has always been a great trip for It'll Be Fine, and Dave's been good at getting him a lot of pockets. I use 4 and 5. I mean, I might be biased against West Coast Beach, which I've always had trouble saying, because the last time I saw him here and I was calling his races, he was an 8 claimer. This horse was an 8,000 claimer and not a very good one, I might add. When he was in Alberta last year, he was looking like he was at the end of the line. And he has been rejuvenated by Rebecca Canak. Kudos to her. She's done a great job. But he had a couple different trainers out here that are decent trainers, and they weren't getting him to go. Rod Terrace is a trainer that had him not that long ago. He was an 8 claimer. So for me, he got a great trip last time from the rail. He is sharp. But if you put him out to the 6 and you give It'll Be Fine and Sunshine Boy a start under their belts, where they were the 2 dominant horses in the preferred all last year, and they're inside of him, I'm just going to take those 2. And I like It'll Be Fine the best, but I'm going to take the 4 and the 5. Sunshine Boy's won the preferred enough out there, 11 last year. He's got to start under his belt. He's bred for Merino. They should be much better. So I took the 4 and the 5, and I am going to be against West Coast Beach here.
Well, this is the race where I take a stand and I drop my microphone at the same time. And I was hoping that the camera would follow me as I took a stand, but I remembered we don't hire videographers for this. So
camera, yeah.
Yeah, no, it stands by itself, and unlike me, I need people to help hold me up every now and again. I'm purely on It'll Be Fine. I sure. think the name's apropos inside of this race. He was really good first out. I really didn't think he had any chance to win first out, but he went the type of mile that second out, I have to imagine, especially with how much he towered over this class last season, that he's probably just going to slide back into that position. He has options, too, because he's got speed to the outside, speed to the inside. Like that song, Here I Am Stuck in the Middle with You. I don't know if these guys are jokers necessarily, but I also just take a stand merely because, in the first leg, I'm taking the 2 favorites, and I don't want to just take the 2 favorites again. Why would I want to kill my equity that badly? If I wanted to just, give money away, I'd go spend it, not gamble it. So I'm going to try singling. It'll be fine inside of the preferred pace as we go into what I think is the most interesting race of the sequence. And Murray, we were talking before recording this segment that you had some horses that you thought were going to slide under the radar. As we go into this $5,000 conditional claimer with a $5,200 purse and an 8-horse field, is this the race where you think those horses lie?
Yes, there was one horse I thought in the whole sequence that maybe will be a little bit overlooked, and it is in this race 8, and it's the 8 Chuck Hugh Farley. Same one as you probably. So probably maybe not as much under the radar, and I'm a little hesitant to say I like this horse, but the reason I like it is because off a Dave Hudon claim, and the 8 is the trailing post, and he's going to get a trip. And if he can get him to function, which no one else has except for Kelly Hort, if you look at this horse's last 20, 30 starts, the only time the horse has literally got a sniff, like just functioned as a racehorse, is when Kelly Hort was in the bike, right? February 27th, win. December 19th, win. Every other start gets beat by multiple lengths. Best finish is 5th, right? And Kelly knows this horse. Kelly raised this horse, brought it to the races. So I'm a little hesitant when it goes away from Kelly, although he was just driving. But Dave Hudon does a great job off the claim out here in the on the West Coast, and I respect the claim, and I like the 8-hole trailing post. So I'm using 1, 4, and 8. I think that the 4 Airline Pilot is going to have to work a little bit more and cut it this time, whereas he had the 2-hole last time. But you got to use them. I think that sets up the 1 for the 2-hole, which he's going to be more effective out of the 2-hole instead of cutting it like he did last time. And I think Chuck Hugh Farley is going to be just off of those to try to use the kind of kick that he showed last week when Kelly drove and perhaps overtake them all. So he is my sort of under the radar horse, but I did use 1, 4, 8. I would think you should get at least a 5-1 on Chuck Hugh Farley. But with you guys liking him as well, I'm starting to question that.
Well, and Mike, to Murray's point, when he was thinking Chuck Hugh Farley might be able to trip out, you look down the page here versus some of the other races in the sequence. Most of these horses are pretty evenly matched. This does look like a race that's going to come down purely to who's in the right spot at the right time.
I want to know where the 28-1 kick came from for this horse, really. I mean, he was like Murray said, like 1 for 2 years, and he actually used to be a pretty decent horse a couple years ago.
When Kelly Hort had him. Yeah.
So, I mean, now that wins this race. If he can kick 28-1 again, I don't care where he's at. He's going to win. He's going to win this race if he can do that. And the trailing post, that's fine for him. An early move could be in the cards again for this one. Maybe he's just that sharp. I think Airline Pilot's going to be overbet, especially given the barn, the connections there. That horse was 1-9 last week. It's going to be a sub-even money again in this race. So we like favorites early. You're going to have to take a shot somewhere. If this chalks out here, this could pay under $20, honestly, given the early 2 races. So I think that this is the race you want to probably play against Airline Pilot. That race looked like a walkover last week. This is not. And I do think the 8 needs used. I don't know that I would use the 1. He doesn't really necessarily like to beat very many horses. Plenty of shares, but he used to win a lot. This horse 11 years old. I would probably use the 2, use the 3, credit his magic. Also, off a pretty nice win there last time. You get an inside post. He's a forward horse. Maybe he gets the front. I could see it lining up with a lot of horses up close in this race. That's why I like the 2. I think that he's capable of kicks in the past. I like the driver switch here also. I like the inside post. So I would probably be 2, 3, 8 here, but you could talk me into some others. So I would be against the 4, try to catch a price here.
I think the 2 is probably your best price inside of that too, because, coming off the claim for Chuck Hugh Farley, especially into the Dave Hudon barn. Mike, if you remember, Are You Crazy, who's in a couple of races ago, Dave Hudon claimed that one, and we saw the type of improvement that you can sometimes see when a horse goes into Dave Hudon's barn. Just first out, that horse dropped 3 or 4 seconds.
He does a nice job.
Yeah, he could beat anybody.
For himself, it's especially good. So Kelly Hudon, that's his wife. They do a nice job first off the claim. You have to use the 8 here, in my opinion.
But also,
I just don't like the 1 for 25, Mike. That's what takes me off the 2. Last year, 1 for 25. Just not the 1's not a big winner either, but at least, scraped out 3 wins. does have 156 lifetime starts. I wanted to mention, but yeah, that's for why I took the 1 instead of the 2 here.
I also love, it has to be said in this case too, Murray. You said you don't like the 1 for 25 on the 2, but you will absolutely take the 1 for 25 on the 8.
And that's because he's a brand new horse. That 1 for 25 was all with trainers that did not do the job Dave Hudon does. That's for sure.
Yeah, no.
And when Kelly Hort jumped in the bike, the horse looked like Nitros. So I mean, who knows, right? But the 1 for 25 is a distant memory for me with Chucky Farley. But you're right, it's still 1 for 25.
Yeah, it's still. And I mean, he might be able to go 2 for 2 to start this season. I'm on board with you on Chucky Farley, especially since he has Malloy right in front of him. So you know that from the second tier, he's not going to get caught in Nowheresville to the quarter. He's going to stand some type of chance to forge a path into the race. Granted, Mike was saying, where'd that 28-1 kick come from? I think it came from the minute half. Like, that was not a really fast race off the bench. And so depending on how the pace sets up for this race too, you know, he might be able to still have a kick like that in him, or he might need to hope that the speed sucks inside of this race. All of this goes to my point, which is I only use one other horse inside of this race. Airline Pilot, I'm in agreement with Mike. I think you have to bet against him. And you can go back to last week's episode. I said, even though I singled this horse, as I wrote it down on the back of my CVS coupon, I singled him by default. I didn't even like him inside of the race. But, you know, I'm a seasoned enough horse player to know when I look at a race, I know just a horse stands a better chance than everybody else. I don't have to like him because I knew he was going to be a short price. And he was a short price. He was 30 cents on the dollar. But he crushed off pocket trip. And that was because he had the pylon post. He has a different situation now. And, you know, you look back, when he's gotten caught first over, he hasn't fared well. He hasn't really done well trying to pass horses. This could be a really great opportunity inside of this sequence because he's the morning line favorite. And I hope that, no, granted, we hope that every single harness player listens to our show. But since we're admonishing this horse so deeply, I hope nobody watches this. So that way the few who do are going to be able to capitalize on maybe Chucky Farley, or I think Credit is Magic. I really like this horse, the 3 horse inside of this race too, because I think he lands on the point. I think he has the best chance of taking them gate to wire. And the 4-1 morning line is not too shabby, even though he's moving slightly up in class. I know Scott Knight's going to be aggressive with him. And so he either takes him all the way around, or in my mind, Chucky Farley collars him, or a secret third thing that upsets all of us might occur. This is the make or break race of the sequence, certainly. I think you have to bet hinging on this being the most chaotic race. And so you can maybe anchor some more solid opinions in some of the other races. Like that's at least what I did, where I'm singling the morning line favorite in the second leg. I'm taking the most obvious in the first leg. I'm hinging that this third leg is going to prove fruitful with these low-level claimers. And we go into the payoff leg, hopefully. I don't know if all of us will, with how these numbers are lining up. We might all go into the payoff leg hoping for something to happen. This is a $12,000 claiming condition event, $7,500 purse, 7 horses going postward. And Murray, to cap off your ticket, how you going in this one?
I went 3 deep. I went 2, 3, and 6. I just didn't feel comfortable really leaving out any of those 3. And I don't much like the other 4, although I did bet Loaded Dragon last week against Tougher, I guess. Actually, against much of the same, and really just didn't get the job done. So I left out the 7. I went 2, 3, and 6. Hurricane Frigno would be my top pick. Off the layoff, they get Brandon to drive in the qualifier. He destroys the field by more than 8. I know it's just a qualifier, but 28 and 2 indicating readiness, obviously. Cody Easton's taken over training this horse himself. He owns the horse. He did pretty well out here when he took over training on a few that he had here in Alberta last year. And this horse raced well in Alberta last year, picking up 6 wins. So I think it's Brandon right down the highway here with the 2. But I see Buddyville being close. He's always close. He's pretty much like Mike's Buddy Knox, same connection. Scott Knight driving for Rod Terrace. He's always close. And Sunset Rider was huge last week for Kelly. And, you know, Phil's going to drive this week. When Phil drives for Kelly, they usually do well. I'm assuming Kelly's away somewhere because he's got his horses in, but he's not driving. And, you know, this horse is a front end threat. If Hurricane Frigno doesn't leave, he has had a problem getting a little steppy in the past, would be the concern with if you were going to look at singling the 2. Sunset Rider and him probably work out the lead. those two are tough, but I included Buddyville as well. I've got 236. My ticket only costs $18. I think there's several ways it can hopefully pay more than $18. So I finish it off with those three.
This is an interesting race to end the sequence on, Mike, because, we have the speed on the outside from Sunset Rider, and we know he's a one-way type. He just wants to plow down the road if he can. But since he's drawn outside there, I think that adds an extra dimension to this race, because does he get an easy lead? Is he going to have to work for it? And from there, it seems like some of these other ones might be able to kind of sneak in as a result. There's no real clear way it sets up.
Well, the 2 obviously is the key to the race, because if he blasts, then that's going to park the 6, and the 2's a front end type of horse. And I do think that could really make things difficult for the 6. Unless he can find a pocket somehow, he's going to be parked, and that's really not his game. And I do think that if he gets stuck outside, he probably doesn't do anything in this race, and I don't want him. I'm not going to use him, and I think he's going to be bet in here. He was bet last week. He was sub 3-1 versus these type of horses. His speed is obvious. There's a lot of ones on his page, so I do think that with the 2 in the race, that compromises the 6. I'll use Buddyville. I liked him last week. Second back, I think the inside post gets a little bit of a setup. I like the barn, so I like that one. And then a price for me would be the 4, Pure 4, Mr. Toffee. Now, this horse rarely wins, right? But he needs a setup. Well, he might get that setup with the 6 outside in here. Lots of speed. His kick is very good. I liked the 27-4 last time. That looked like a pretty good setup into this. He's going to be a price for me. So he would be one that I know he's 4-1 morning line. He's going to be higher in this race. He was 17-1 last week against, better. I do think that he's higher in here. He's probably 8, 9, 10-1, and he's going to make this ticket pay. So I'd be 2, 3, 4.
I am thinking of a number between 1 and 7. That number is the one that I use inside of this race. Do we have any guesses
3,
what this
probably.
number might be? Mike got it first round, and this is why he was my co-host for 15 years of my life. I single in on Buddyville. And again, you can pull up last week's episode. I said there's no way in hell I'm taking this horse first off the bench, but similarly, he lost first off the bench, which a round of applause for me for calling that, even though I was against Sunset Rider inside of that race. But second off the bench with a good draw here and that tightener under his belt, I think he's a no-brainer. I think the 2 is interesting, though, to your point, Murray. I just don't know that he's really fast enough. It's tough to really gauge how those Century Mile efforts translate to the Fraser 5/8 because, this horse was going 57, 56. And, of course, everyone says time only matters in prison. But, I don't want to go to jail and figure out if that's true. So
the thing that's strange about it, Ray, out here is that the Fraser races quite often go faster than the Century Mile races, even though Century Mile is a mile track. Century Mile races when it's cold, it's not that fast a track. Fraser usually is faster, and some say perhaps a little short in the old dimension category. So I would think his Century Mile, when Brandon drove him, wins down the road in 56 at Century Mile, that's going to translate to at least that fast at Fraser.
Okay. Well, and I was wondering too, since it's a dual purpose track, is it also, does it have like a deepness to it versus how most harness tracks are more stiff?
They change it over, but it's not a super fast surface. I could put it that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then that might be something to consider as well. Because to Mike's point, the 2 and the 6 are the main speeds inside of this race, but Buddyville, I think just has enough power. I like to say oomph, where no matter how the speed sets up and stuff, I think with that tightener under his belt, he's going to have sufficient energy to just oomph his way to the front if need be, and to keep my ticket real cheap. So that said, it's time to go over the winning lotto numbers for Friday night, March 6th, 2025. Not March 6th, March 7th. Today is March 6th. Murray, to start with you, your phone number. I'm looking to call you later, buddy. Now give us your pick 4 ticket.
My ticket is 6 with 4-5 with 1-4-8 with 2-3-6. Costs $18 for $1, which I recommend playing it for $1, not 20 cents.
I don't know, Mike. Who has $18?
$3.60 for 20 cents.
Okay. Now you're talking my language. Mike, your ticket.
I'm gonna double that. It's 4-6 with 4-6 with the 2-3-8s with 2-3-4. So 36 for $1, and enough prices in there that if it does hit, it will pay.
The only way my ticket is more expensive than all of yours is if the tariffs somehow kick in. We do not know if they ever will. But right now, how it stands, my ticket is 5-6 with 4 with 3-8 with 3. That's $4.
$4 ticket.
Another
Standard
$4
Ray ticket.
I like to think of, the family budget. I want to give them enough thrill for their dollar where they could still go buy the son a teddy bear or the daughter a necklace or
Sure.
Food for the weekend. That's a big one.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big one. Because, if the tariffs kick in, that's going to – I might need to get out $2 tickets in the future. But nonetheless, we definitely know Murray Slough will be back with us in the future. Murray, thank you so much for joining us here in the present to talk about this week's Fraser action. And, of course, any other things you want to promote as we get closer to that Century Downs opening meet?
I'd say that's it. I gave you the Century Downs plug. Once again, March 29th, Century Downs back racing, harness racing 2 days a week, Saturday afternoon, Wednesday evening. And my picks should be up again, I would assume, Mike. I'm going to send them to you at least, and Mike will put them up at...
we will definitely get the Century picks on YahooPicks.com.
YahooPicks.com, so we want to mention that.
Reminder, Contest Jockey's back tonight for Fraser. So if you're watching this Thursday, it's Thursday night Contest Jockey for that. And they're going to do some Thursday contests on contestjockey.com. I know we're going to have some Century contests also. They're big fans of Contest Jockey. The London contests are very sharp, very well attended. And if you win one of the contests, there's a big contest on Camluck night. I'm in there already because I have won one of the contests for London. So big pot in that one. So jump in on Contest Jockey and check that out.
And it's free to enter, free to play.
Yes.
And I imagine there's some cash prizes down the road in some of these contests.
Absolutely. Lots of cash out there. It's free cash. And the contests are, they're tough. You get a couple hundred people. They're not easy to win. You have to be engaged the entire time. Live money contests. Get in on Contest Jockey.
Yeah, it's fun. I can vouch for the fact they do pay you if you win. And you're talking about tariffs in American dollars. So little bonus for us Canadian folks.
Little extra.
If we get in on Contest Jockey and win something.
Get a couple more eggs.
Yep. You can actually purchase eggs if you win one of these. It's a great site and easy to play, lots of fun. So yeah, love Contest Jockey. We'll have that for Century Downs down the road, I'm sure, Mike, once we get rolling.
As for me, I find it interesting, Murray. You guys are opening on the 29th, and Oak Grove opens on the 24th. Again, I know you're trying to avoid us like the plague because we're such a tough time slot to compete with. But
just ripping a page from your playbook, Ray.
That's true. Go where they don't expect you.
That's right. That's right. So March 24th for you, is that a Monday then?
Yes, Mondays, Tuesdays, select Sundays at Oak Grove through July. New post time, 1:45 Central. And that's because, unlike Century Downs, we don't have lights.
Right. Well, we didn't until now.
Yeah, so you understand. You understand when you have to start pushing races 3 minutes apart if you start running a little late.
I've called more than one race completely in the dark there, pretty much. So it'll be nice to have some lights.
Hey, at least they didn't run two races at the same time, though. I would have loved to see that. Fraser Downs racing Thursdays and Fridays. This was a look at the late pick 4 for Friday, March 7th. And much like all of your harness racing wagers, we hope that they are winning ones. Let's be honest, they might not be, but we can hope. Thank you for watching.